This is a recap compilation of comics that feature Spider-Man and have a cover date of 1969. If you like what you see here, there are compilations of previous years, and I post new recaps every Thursday as we journey to read every Spider-Man comic ever. Kingpin wants a valuable clay tablet that is currently on display at ESU here in New York. It should be an easy grab even though it's being guarded, but when one of his employees mentions the danger of Spider-Man, the Kingpin rips his shirt off, beats up 6 men and then fires them all for not making him even need to sweat. He's a little angry about Spider-Man it seems, but once he has the clay tablet, he'll have his final reckoning with our hero. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is the Amazing Spider-Man issue 68, Crisis on the Campus. The next day at ESU, Peter Parker meets Randy Robertson, son of Robbie Robertson, and an abrasive kid named Josh. They ask Peter how he feels about the exhibition hall, which Peter knows nothing about, and they tell him that after the tablet exhibition, the hall is going to be turned into private dorms for alumni instead of low-cost student housing that was promised. They've been petitioning the dean to reverse the decision, but his answer was no. But not for long, they say ominously as they walk away. But Peter doesn't have time to think about what they said, as Gwen catches up and distracts him. Meanwhile and elsewhere, Jonah complains to Robbie Robertson that he didn't get the story about Spider-Man's fight with Mysterio from last issue. Of course, neither did anybody else. But Robbie is too busy worrying about his son. And elsewhere once more, Peter and Gwen pay a visit to Aunt May to see how she's faring after the Mysterio-induced faint. She's on the mend, she claims, and her nephew's visit has made her feel very happy indeed. Until they leave, and we learn that Aunt May is pale and ill, and just didn't want to worry her nephew Peter. The next day, Peter arrives at ESU to find a protest on campus, advocating for low-rent dorms. Randy invites Peter to join them. Once they have enough people, they'll march on the exhibition hall, and Peter hesitates, with questions about exactly what is going on. Josh gets aggressive when Peter asks questions, and when Peter leaves, refusing to be part of a protest he doesn't know about, Josh calls him a chicken. Peter regrets leaving as he heads inside ESU. His sympathies are with the kids, but Josh pushed his buttons and he stormed off, and he's worried that he's disappointed Randy. As he admires the clay tablet on display, the protest outside finally reaches capacity and begins to get rowdy. Outside, some of the crowd don't want Randy involved, calling him the son of an Uncle Tom because of his dad's profession, but Josh stands up for Randy and then leads the protest to shake up the establishment and take over the exhibition hall. Robbie and Jonah learn of the protest and send news vans. And the Kingpin also learns of the protest and sees it as the perfect opportunity to steal the clay tablet. In ESU, the protest begins to clash with the police who are guarding the tablet, and one of the cops pulls a gun on the kids because he's a cop, and things start heating up. And Peter Parker wants to help, but there isn't really a big bad to hit as Spider-Man, and so he just takes pictures. At least he can make some money from this situation. But suddenly, he gets his big bad to hit. An explosion goes off on campus, planted by the Kingpin's men, and while the guards are distracted, Kingpin smashes the door off the hinges and strides into the hall to steal the tablet. But Spider-Man swings over the heads of the protesters to put a stop to the villain. Spidey finds the Kingpin using gas fired from his cane to knock out the guards, and he swings down and punches him. But the Kingpin rises and barrels towards Spider-Man, grabbing him in a bear hug and crushing him, before slamming him down on the ground. The Kingpin is about to finish the job, and our hero forever, when Randy jumps at him from behind and gets slammed into a wall for his troubles. But the distraction gives Spidey enough time to rally, and he delivers punch after punch after punch until the Kingpin falls. But he's not down and out, and he reaches for his cane and he fires, taking down a marble wall. Spidey doesn't have time to swing Randy away, but he shields his new friend with his body as the wall comes down on them both. After excavating from the rubble, Spidey makes sure that Randy is alive before fleeing the scene as the cops arrive. He watches as Randy is arrested, and Robbie, his father, newly arrived, promises to give his son the best legal aid possible. Knowing that Randy will be alright with his dad at his side, Spider-Man swings after the Kingpin's men, who plan to lead the webhead into a trap. The Kingpin has stolen a prized tablet and is enjoying his victory when one of his henchmen asks the question, "What about Spider-Man? Why is Kingpin letting the hero follow them?" Well, that's simple. It will save Kingpin the trouble of hunting Spider-Man. Kingpin isn't scared of anybody, except his wife, says another henchman, who is slapped around and fired for daring to mention the Kingpin's wife. Angry, the Kingpin storms off to store the tablet in a safe that doesn't have a lock. It's just got a really, really heavy door. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is the Amazing Spider-Man issue 69. Mission: Crush the Kingpin. At the police precinct, Randy and Josh are being questioned by the cops and trying to explain that they had nothing to do with the theft of the tablet or the Kingpin's involvement. When Robbie shows disappointment in his son's actions, Randy explains that he has to be tough, has to be more militant because of who his father is. And Josh explains that they have to do things their own way, have to shake Whitey up a little to achieve their goals. Outside, a protest is taking place, demanding the release of the demonstrators. Gwen finds herself at odds with the protest, arguing that it isn't helping matters when one of them calls Peter Parker a chicken. She slaps the boy and dresses him down. Peter Parker is twice the man that he is, but there's a little part of her that worries that maybe what the boy said was true. Meanwhile and elsewhere, Spider-Man has found his way to the Kingpin and is about to open a door when his spider sense warns him of danger on the other side. Inside, the Kingpin's men wait with itchy trigger fingers, and when Spider-Man appears in the window, they riddle him with bullets, killing him. Thanks for watching and joining me on this... Oh, wait, no, hold on. He's not dead? It turns out Spider-Man has made a dummy with webbing and put his shirt on it, tricking the henchman and me. And the real Spider-Man now appears, topless, to web away their guns and knock the henchman down. And with the henchman handled, Spider-Man leaps at the Kingpin, but the Kingpin manages to grab both of his wrists and throw him towards his web dummy, tangling Spidey up since the web can stick to his bare skin. But being webbed up doesn't mean that Spidey can't move, and he's able to dodge the Kingpin's attacks, return in kind, and then put his top back on. When Spider-Man, now dressed, swings a punch at the Kingpin grabs it once more and twists it and knocks Spider-Man out from the sheer pain. The Kingpin is victorious. Except that he's not. Spidey was playing possum and delivers a punch to the gut, wraps the villain up in a curtain and webs the end of his cane so that it explodes when the Kingpin tries to use it. With the Kingpin down, Spidey spots one of his henchmen making a run for it and chases after him, thinking that the henchman is going for the stolen tablet. And while Spidey's away, the police arrive and arrest the Kingpin. When they ask him where the tablet is, he says that his web-swinging ally is taking it safely away, implicating Spider-Man in his schemes. Elsewhere, Spider-Man is able to get into the Kingpin's safe because, surprise, other people are strong too, and he secures the tablet. But when he attempts to return it to the police, they shoot at him, thinking that he's in cahoots with the Kingpin. Spider-Man is able to get away, but he's angry now. He does everything right, and still they treat him like the enemy. Well, if they're going to call him a menace, if they're going to treat him like a menace, then he may as well become a menace. The Wasp is getting married to a man called Yellow Jacket, a man who claims to have killed Hank Pym, and none of the Avengers know why. And when any of them try to press the point, the Wasp shuts them down. Hank's gone, and she has another chance for happiness, and she won't let it slip away, even though she literally met him a few days ago. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is the Avengers issue 60, Till Death Do Us Part. As the heroes debate the merits of the marriage, Jarvis heads to the door to let in the caterers. Except, surprise, they're not the caterers at all, but the ringmaster and his circus of crime. As one of them prepares some explosives, the others pretend to cater, waiting for Thor to arrive before they blow the whole place up. With our heroes unaware of the danger, and there are a lot of heroes at the wedding, including Spider-Man, the wedding goes ahead. The Wasp marries Yellow Jacket, much to Hawkeye's distress. To let off steam, Hawkeye storms away into the kitchen, only to uncover the circus of crime mid-crime. Unable to get to his arrows, he's taken down and tied up alongside Jarvis. Outside, unaware of what went down in the kitchen, the Wasp cuts the wedding cake using a replica of Black Knight's sword, when she is suddenly attacked by a giant python writhing from out of the cake. Black Panther is able to subdue it when suddenly the circus of crime bursts out of the kitchen. The Avengers ask the other heroes to stand down. This is Avengers business after all. and they come to blows with the evil circus. Black Panther takes on the acrobats, the Vision takes on the human cannonball, and Yellow Jacket tries to stop the ringmaster, only to find his new wife wrapped up by that giant snake again, and one wrong move will get her killed. Yellow Jacket has lost. Except Yellow Jacket suddenly begins to remember something and then grows gigantic, bursting out of his Yellow Jacket outfit and revealing that he was Goliath all along. In his massive form, Goliath, also known as Hank Pym, uses the giant python to tie the ringmaster up. And elsewhere, Black Panther throws the acrobats through a window, the Vision shoots the human cannonball with laser eyes, and the Wasp punches Princess Python. By the time that Hawkeye can escape from bondage, the villains are being led away by the police. With the battle now won, the Wasp explains to Hawkeye why Goliath is here and Yellow Jacket is missing. It seems that Hank Pym dropped some vials, giving himself amnesia from a gas, and that the personality of Yellow Jacket was what emerged, almost the opposite of Hank Pym. Hank Pym was too busy to marry the Wasp, and so Yellow Jacket wanted nothing more. And the Wasp knew all along from the moment that he had kissed her, and she makes sure to remind Hank that no matter what name he married her under, they're still legally wed. A kid is reading books and dreaming of a story. That's our first framing device. Saw, the god of blunder, is singing a tale of woe to all who will listen, even if they don't want to. And that's our second framing device, and we're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is not Brand Echh, issue 12, Comic Lot. Like Camelot, but comics. King Saw is in hiding, specifically behind a tree, and specifically because he's to be wed, but really doesn't want to be. But then he sees his bride-to-be, one Sarah Jane, and he's entranced. When she questions where the action is in his kingdom, Saw wraps her in his arms and sings a song to the tune of Camelot about how no crime can go unpunished because of the comics code. He carries her towards his castle against her will, still singing about all the villains that he defeats. And into this scene rides a Spider-Man knight, also singing, who announces that he's here to see how Saw handles his villains. Saw, ever the braggart, shows him. But while he's thrashing Loki, smashing Dr. Doom and mass dash bashing the Red Skull, Sarah Jane is flirting with Spider-Man. To convince Sarah Jane that he's the man for her, and to truly show Spider-Man how to defeat villains, Saw announces a big tournament, and a bunch of heroes ride into a jousting match with a bunch of villains, and they clash together and land in a big heap, while Spider-Man rides away with Sarah Jane. But it's okay, thinks Saw. He still has all these villains and heroes in his kingdom, except that the villains quit, tired of being beaten up all the time. And the heroes are quitting too, and Saw is left to sing alone. Until that little boy from the first framing device wakes up and uses a tin can phone to tell Kid Jack Kirby to draw this wonderful story that he just came up with. Toad has returned from the graveyard with a bag full of body parts for his master, Baron von Doomenstein. But since the Baron isn't around and there's a body on the slab, Toad decides to get started without him, bringing the creature to life with electricity, except that the body is Doom, who was just having a nap. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is not Brand Echh, issue 12, Frankenstein 69. After getting over his anger, Doom gets to creating new life. He wants to create a man with a famous Hollywood face, the brain of a nuclear physicist, the hands of a concert pianist, and the legs of a track star. And he does it. He creates life. Except that the Hollywood star is Boris Karloff, who famously played Frankenstein. When Doom drops his pencil and the monster picks it up with his mouth, Doom discovers that he doesn't have the brain of atomic scientist Pierre St. Bernard, that someone had taken Pierre already, and that Toad figured that any old St. Bernard would do. And the legs of the track star? Well, a racehorse is a track star. As Doom angrily lashes out at Toad, the monster leaves the castle and goes for a walk. He then gets swept up in a protest for monster rights, including the wonderful sign Make Earth's Terra Firma, but he doesn't want to seem like a hippie, and so he escapes down a back alley, meeting Spidey-Man on the way. Eventually, he bumps into Dracula, who promises to lead him to safety. But Dracula lies and brings him back to Doom. But before Doom can regain control of his monster, The sounds of a mob are heard outside, and the monster grabs Doom and heads to the roof. They find the mob is made up of comic strip characters, angry at the monsters because kids just want to read horror now and not the funny pages anymore. But the monster didn't even want to be a monster. He just wants to play piano with his pianist hands. And as luck would have it, Doom wants to play bass fiddle and Dracula is a jazz guitarist. And so instead of being killed by the angry mob, the three of them start a band with an octopus on drums. The Kingpin is in jail and raging at Spider-Man for putting him there, until he remembers that he pretended that Spider-Man was working with him and instead just quietly seethes. As the man in the cell opposite, who made fun of his wife last issue, mocks Kingpin's predicament, Kingpin sets to work on escaping, grasping the bars of his cell in anger, but secretly twisting them. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 70, Spider-Man Wanted. Spider-Man is swinging around New York, holding the tablet that he helped to secure in the last issue. He thought that he'd done the right thing, but because of Kingpin telling everyone that they were working together, the police are hunting for Spider-Man. To prove this point, a cop shoots at Spidey until our hero swings down and knocks the gun from out of his hand. Looking for a place to stash the tablet, Spider-Man swings home and hides it in his cupboard, and then has a restless night where he dreams about all the worries in his life. At college the next day, Peter is confronted by Gwen Stacy, angry that Peter seemed to have disappeared when things got rough, that maybe he is the coward that everybody thinks he is, and that Gwen is stupid for loving him. And elsewhere, the protesters and the dean reach an agreement. The exhibition hall will be converted into low-rent dorms, which is exactly what the protesters wanted. It turns out it's also what the dean wanted, but he needed to convince the trustees. But he apologises for not speaking to the students earlier, and since they had nothing to do with the missing tablet, all charges are dropped. Meanwhile and elsewhere, the Kingpin has loosened the bars of his cell and he charges out of prison, leaving broken guards in his wake, and determined to find Spider-Man and the tablet. And speaking of the tablet, Spider-Man is tired of the police still hunting him, and soon learns of Kingpin's escape. Hoping to prove his innocence by turning the Kingpin in, he turns over the city, taking out gang after gang with the tablet on his back, hoping to draw the villain out of hiding. Then, what looks like a hijacking turns out to be a trap, and the Kingpin himself lunges for Spider-Man. Spider-Man is easily able to take on the Kingpin, especially since they're out in the open, but his victory is interrupted by a car pulling up. It's Jonah and Ned Leeds in the Bugle car, looking to get a scoop. But as Jonah yells at Spidey, another car pulls up at the opposite side. A getaway car for the Kingpin, and the Kingpin does exactly that. He gets away. And Spider-Man is mad. So mad that he leaps towards Jonah, grabbing him by the collar and demands to know what the newspaper editor has against him. Why does Jonah hate him for no reason? But Jonah can't answer, because he passes out. And Ned Leeds can't feel a pulse. Spider-Man flees, terrified that he's gone too far, that he's lost everything. If Jonah is dead, then it will prove that Spider-Man was exactly as dangerous as the Bugle always said. Nothing seems to be working out for Peter Parker. The world thinks Spider-Man worked with Kingpin to steal a tablet, the Kingpin escaped from prison, and when he got angry at Jonah, he may have killed him. Then, mid-mope, his roommate Harry comes home, while Peter is still in his Spider-Man costume. Peter is able to grab a dressing gown to disguise most of his superheroic alter ego, and he prays that Harry just doesn't look down at his Spider-Man socks. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 71, The Speedster and the Spider. Fortunately for Peter Parker, Harry is too exhausted from dancing with Mary Jane, and he retires to bed before discovering who his housemate really is. Relieved, Peter remembers that he has photographs of his fight with the Kingpin that may exonerate Spider-Man. It looks like things are looking up for Peter Parker, until Quicksilver races into town. We're quickly caught up on his story, pun absolutely intended, and we learn that he, the Scarlet Witch and Toad have been made to look evil thanks to Magneto's actions. To clear their names, Quicksilver races to New York to tell the Avengers, but finds that they're all in Africa. Looking for an alternate way to prove his innocence and hearing of Spider-Man's crimes, Quicksilver decides to take the web crawler down. Meanwhile and elsewhere, Robbie Robertson is visiting Jonah in hospital. It turns out that he's not dead, he just had a shock and needs a few weeks of bed rest. And that few weeks of bed rest means that Robbie is in charge of the Bugle, and so when Peter arrives the next day with photos to sell that show Spider-Man fighting the Kingpin, Robbie not only puts out a new front page declaring Spider-Man's innocence, but also pays Peter a very large check. Peter is so happy that it worked out that he swings over to George Stacy's office and hands him the missing tablet. He doesn't hang around for questions though, in case George realizes who he is. As Spider-Man swings around happy, thinking about all the different ways that he can spend his new money, a blur whizzes past him and snaps his web line, and suddenly he's falling. The blur belongs to Quicksilver, who runs down the wall to stop Spider-Man from dying, but finds that our hero has already saved himself, of course, swinging himself underneath an awning to hide. When Quicksilver finds him, he demands Spider-Man's surrender, that Quicksilver is here to apprehend the webhead, and the fight that entails when Spider-Man doesn't is one-sided. Spider-Man is fast, but Quicksilver is so much faster. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Ned Leeds arrives with the latest edition of the Bugle, but isn't sure Jonah should see it. But John Jameson, Jonah's son, encourages him, and so Jonah learns that his own paper, his own blasted paper, has declared Spider-Man innocent. And back with Spider-Man, and Quicksilver is whizzing around him, so fast to pull the oxygen away from our hero and make him pass out. But Spider-Man is able to survive for one last movement, and he times it just right to stick his arm out and knock the wind out of Quicksilver. But when the police arrive to arrest the two of them, Spidey carries Quicksilver to safety, up onto the rooftops. And so Quicksilver learns that maybe he's not as much of a villain as the press seems to think. And so Quicksilver leaves, and it seems that Peter's luck is on the up. Or it's just a lull before the storm. The Simple Surfer is cruising through the New York skyline and bumping into Spider-Man while he sings the praises of the city. He loves the smog and the concrete and the rodents, and he hates violence. In fact, he'd beat up anybody who even uses that word. And then he remembers his origin, which feels like only yesterday, because it was only yesterday. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is not Brand Echh issue 13, The Origin of the Simple Surfer. Yesterday, Boring Cad lived in a utopia, filled with free movies, a library of comics, food dispensers, an instant knowledge machine, and a beautiful woman who wanted to marry him. But Boring was bored. Then his program is interrupted by the news that a spacecraft is approaching the planet, and Boring does what all heroes would do: he runs away, only to be eaten by the spacecraft. Inside the ship, he meets Galacticus, the legendary salesman who will travel from planet to planet and sell everything. In fact, his whole outfit is for sale. Boring offers to be his roadman to get out of marriage, and Galacticus wraps him up in saran wrap and grants him a magical surfboard, which he then proceeds to pilot directly into Galacticus' head. And so, now the Simple Surfer, Boring heads to Earth, but ends up giving the Fantastic Four the gift of life, a lifetime subscription to Life magazine, and so he is banished there. But that's all okay, because he has finally found a place that feels like home: the beach. Marvel Comics are renting out their superheroes, and, for a small fee, any superhero can be yours. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is not Brand Echh issue 13, Rent a Superhero. Rent a hero today. Hulk can lift up an entire house to rescue baseballs, or destroy the small towns of your enemies. Flying heroes like Thor are great for a ride, but don't let your family steal him to use as a dressmaker's dummy. Spider-Man can make you hammocks, or take you for a ride swinging around the city. Namor can clean out your pool, although he might plot revenge via Invisible Piranha. And the Human Torch? Perfect for your barbecue. If you're going to the beach, the Silver Surfer is perfect. Need something fixed around the house? Iron Man is your man. And if you need your sister turned into a frog, just rent Doctor Strange. But make sure that you've got enough money to pay. Otherwise, some heroes might come around for debt collecting. Marvel Comics is closed for the day and everyone has left, except for Irving Forbush, who has been reading The Simple Surfer and has seen that he's in trouble. And so he suits up to save the day as Forbush Man. But where is Spidey? He's holding up the title of the story. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is not Brand Echh, issue 13, The Return of Forbush Man, The Way Out Wonder. In the comics, the Simple Surfer has been defeated by the Strangey, and so Forbush needs to get there first. He enlists the help of his uncle, who instantly knows who he is, sees through his disguise, and they fly up into the mountains, seeing the Air Force fleeing in the opposite direction. Forbush leaps from the plane and splashes down into a puddle and finds himself face to face with the Strangey. The Strangey is a cosmic being who will abide no mortal, and he zaps Forbush with laser eyes and smashes the earth below him. When the Strangey tries to crush Forbush with a rock, he misses and crushes his own foot instead. Hopping in pain and hopping mad, the Strangey gives up and leaves, and Forbush Man has won, apparently. And so he travels back with his uncle, back to New York, where the uncle has a giant ape to shoot down, and back to the Marvel offices, just in time to be there when Stan Lee arrives and wonders what Irving Forbush does all day. The Shocker bursts through the wall of George Stacy's office and knocks Stacy out as we dive straight into the action. He's here to steal the clay tablet that Spidey left with Captain Stacy last issue, and when Gwen arrives, he takes the tablet and leaves. George comes to once more and Gwen calls the police, but if the Shocker once fought Spidey to a standstill, who's gonna stop him now? We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 72, Rocked by the Shocker. The Shocker is visiting a fence to sell the tablet, but because Spider-Man got it back from the Kingpin, no one wants to touch the tablet now, for fear of Spidey's wrath. Well, if everyone is afraid of Spider-Man, the Shocker will give them something to really be afraid of, and he begins a rampage. It's a rampage so momentous that Peter Parker hears about it on the bus and runs off at the next stop to intervene. But he has to be quick, because he's meeting Aunt May in an hour. As Spider-Man, he swings down to fight the Shocker on the rooftop, but his punches become glancing blows against the Shocker's vibrating suit. The Shocker blasts a hole underneath Spider-Man and Spidey falls, saving himself with webbing and popping back up to kick the consciousness out of Shocker. Thinking that he's won, Spider-Man carries the Shocker over his shoulder, but is surprised by Shocker's sudden alertness and thrown from the building. He's able to save himself, but the Shocker gets away. Fortunately, Spider-Man hits him with a tracer. With the Shocker dealt with, for now, Peter is able to make it to the train station in time to see his Aunt May off. She's heading to Florida for a break, with the money that Peter got from the Bugle last issue. And to add to the good news, the headline in the Bugle is positive about Spider-Man once again, calling out his heroic fight with the Shocker that happened half an hour ago? The paper also talks about Doc Connors, and Spider-Man remembers that he's the Lizard, which I'm sure is nothing to worry about. Meanwhile and elsewhere, Jonah is in the hospital and he's just seen the headline praising Spider-Man. His own paper, praising Spider-Man. He rants and he raves and he tries to call the office until a nurse sedates him. Back with Peter once again, and he is caught up with Gwen, who is worried about her dad after his run-in with the Shocker. As they both enter a cafe together, they run into Flash Thompson, on leave from the army. Gwen greets him warmly, but a joke comment from Flash gets Peter mad. Mad that he's trying to cut in on his girl. But Gwen doesn't understand. How can he be a chicken when things get tough, but then act angry around the real heroes? And Peter can't tell her the real reason. But at least he can beat up the Shocker. And so he does, finding the Shocker robbing an armoured car. Spidey punches him and dodges his blasts, and when the Shocker knocks a wall down on top of Spider-Man, he's able to cushion it with his web. He then webs the villain's feet, slams him headfirst into the ground, webs up his face and throws him into a giant spider's web. That's a lot of webs. And in case the Shocker feels like vibrating out, Spider-Man takes his shock gauntlets too. It was almost a perfect fight, until the driver of the armoured truck shoots at him, thinking that Spider-Man's in league with the Shocker. So Spider-Man flees, annoyed at his bad Parker luck, while the armoured truck driver finds the Shocker webbed up, and the money safely nearby. Namor has found himself in unfamiliar waters, and the fish are either running scared or dead. It might have something to do with the volcano spewing black fumes, but before he can investigate further, he is struck by a foe, by the Human Torch. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is Submariner issue 14, Burn Namor Burn. Namor is surrounded by fire and quickly losing moisture, and therefore his strength. He's also confused why Johnny Storm is attacking him. Summoning his last reserves of power, he dives through the flames and knocks the Human Torch down, but not far enough, not into the water. The Human Torch blasts Namor with heat and downs our hero, and reveals himself not to be Johnny Storm at all, but the original Human Torch. The Torch contacts the Mad Thinker with a push of a button and says that he's completed his mission. But the Thinker demands that he kills Namor, something that the Torch can't bring himself to do. And while he pontificates, Namor is able to drag himself to the ocean, regain his strength, and raise a tidal wave against the Human Torch. Trapped in water, the Torch explains why he attacked, that he woke with no memory, and that the Thinker showed him footage of his previous adventures, fighting side by side with his sidekick Toro. The Thinker instilled in him that he is an android meant to obey, and so he obeyed when he was told to throw a device into the volcano and to attack Namor. Meanwhile and elsewhere, the Mad Thinker is with the Puppet Master and Egghead, and they enact their master plan. Using the power of the volcano, they activate a satellite that absorbs power from anything that it touches, blacking out the US. They announce to the world, that includes your favourite webhead, that this blackout will be permanent unless their terms are met. Now working together, knowing who the real villain is, Namor and the Human Torch smash into the Thinker's base under the volcano. As they try to stop the machine, the Human Torch is shot by a laser, and even though Namor knocks the Thinker down and the gun away, the Torch can no longer power down. He's getting hotter and hotter. Namor can't let his ally die, and so he grabs the hot android and uses him to burn through the wall and out into the ocean just in time. The Torch is saved. But his hair in the heat has turned brown, and the Human Torch learns the truth. That he isn't the original Torch at all, but Toro, the sidekick, drugged by the Mad Thinker and led astray, led to think that he was an android. When he sees the Mad Thinker escaping in some kind of flying craft, he can't abide the man getting away, and he flies up, and the ship explodes. There is no sign of the Thinker, nor the Human Torch, and Namor is left to just say something poetic. Spider-Man is hanging around outside the Stacy's house, listening in as George Stacy recovers, and Gwen asks her father whether he's heard from Peter. When Gwen leaves, Spidey swings inside, much to George's discontent, and asks whether the Shocker mentioned anything else about the tablet. Spider-Man was able to capture the Shocker just fine, but no one can find where he stashed that tablet. George Stacy mentions that the Shocker had a girlfriend, and Spidey dives away to hunt her down, getting halfway across the city before realizing that he forgot to ask for her name. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is the Amazing Spider-Man issue 73, The Web Closes. Fortunately for Spider-Man, he stumbles on exactly the right woman, thanks to her being hassled by a large man named Man Mountain Marco, who demands to know where the tablet is hidden. When he rips an armchair in half to show off his might, Spidey smashes through a window and intervenes. As the two men fight, Spidey using his webs and Marco using every single piece of furniture, the villain discovers a secret safe hidden behind a painting. He rips the door out of the wall, tosses Spider-Man down into the rubble, and grabs the tablet inside. But before he can escape, Spider-Man leaps up and clocks him in the face. Meanwhile and elsewhere, Randy Robertson is telling his dad that he's dropping out of school. Robbie protests, telling him that fighting the war on bigotry without education is like a soldier going into a war unarmed. But Randy counters. His father has made it in the white man's world, but he's still answering to a white man. Then, with perfect timing, Jonah comes bursting into the office, fresh out of hospital, and calling Robbie a traitor for printing such pro-Spidey pieces. Robbie stands up to his boss, letting him know that he's the news editor and that he decides what's news, and when Jonah threatens to fire him, Robbie calls his bluff and leaves him blustering. But when Randy calls Jonah a racist, Robbie is quick to correct him. They'll never get anywhere in this world till they recognize who the real enemies are. I'm back with Spider-Man, and he's fighting a real enemy as Man Mountain Marco drops the Shocker's girlfriend from the window. She falls and Spider-Man dives down after her, catching her with his webs before she makes a mess of the pavement below. But Man Mountain Marco is able to get away and deliver the ancient tablet to Silvermane, head of the Maggia. Silvermane has one of his men check the authenticity and readies an expert to discover the secret of the tablet, a secret he is unwilling to share. With no leads, Spider-Man returns home again, finding his housemate Harry out for the evening. He decides to give Doc Connors a call in Florida, hoping to get a job down there so that he can look after his Aunt May as she vacations. But he only succeeds in waking Mrs. Connors, who informs our hero that Kurt left with a couple of men. Peter wonders who those men might have been, but we learn very quickly as Kurt Connors is led into Silvermane's office and told to reveal the tablet's secrets. Doc Connors begs them to let him go, that it isn't safe to have him there, but his worries go unanswered, and so the shadow of the lizard falls upon the story. Dr. Kurt Connors has been kidnapped by Silvermane. He needs to solve the secret of an ancient tablet in under 24 hours or his wife and kids will be dealt with. But the gangsters don't understand. They don't know Connors' secret and how he's desperately trying to hold back his stress to avoid becoming the Lizard. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is the Amazing Spider-Man issue 74, If This Be Bedlam. Spider-Man is hunting for the very tablet that Doc Connors is working on, and for Man Mountain Marco, the Man Mountain who took it. Spotting a connection to the mob, Spider-Man finds himself hunting Caesar Cicero, a man who works for Silvermane and who's looking to take over. Spider-Man finds Cicero, but before he can get answers from him, the mobster presses an emergency button and the room is filled with gangsters. As they shoot at Spidey, they say out loud that he must be there for the Connors family. So now Spider-Man knows and has another goal, and Cicero sneaks away to get the family away from him. After finishing off the gangsters, Spider-Man pulls apart a secret bookcase door and lifts a mechanical door and races to save Martha and Billy Connors, only to fall straight into a trap. Martha and Billy watch the room explode behind them as they're driven away, and they're sure that Spider-Man is dead. But lucky for him and for this channel, he'd been suspicious all along and had opened the trapped door with some webbing from a distance, and so he's alive and able to continue the chase if he knew where to look. Meanwhile and elsewhere, we're back with Silvermane, and he's angry at Cicero, bringing the hostages here where Spider-Man is sure to follow. He marches into Connor's lab and demands results, knowing that his health is failing. If he dies before the tablet is solved, then Connors won't escape with his life. But the doctor is almost there, after realizing that the tablet is not words, but chemical symbols, and that's why a biologist like him can solve it. But this stress, this extra time limit, is starting to bring the green out in him. The next day, with no leads and nowhere to look, Peter Parker shows up at college. But he's out of it, worried about his friend, and even when Harry turns up with a terrible, terrible moustache, he remains in his own head. When he runs off, eager to keep searching for Doc Connors, Harry is quick to judge him, but Gwen stops him. Peter needs help, not hostility. And elsewhere one last time, and Doc Connors has done it. He's created a serum from the tablet's recipe, and Silvermane takes it and drinks it and collapses to the ground. Thinking that the doctor has poisoned Silvermane, Man Mountain Marco grabs Doc Connors, ready to make him pay, but a voice commands him to stop. It's Silvermane, still alive, and suddenly very young and very vibrant. The tablet's secret is revealed. It's the secret of the Fountain of Youth. Matt Murdock is dead, died in a plane crash, and Karen is distraught to have lost the man that she loved. Foggy tries to make her feel better, reassure her that Matt always knew that she loved him, but she decides to stay in the office by herself for a while, cradling the one thing that she has left of Matt, his cane. But Matt is much more alive than she thinks, and he really needs his cane back. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is Daredevil issue 54. Call him Fear. Daredevil swings into his old office to retrieve his cane, but he finds Karen there holding it. She won't hand it over to Daredevil, even when he asks nicely, since it's the only thing that she has left of Matt. So Daredevil follows her car home instead, sneaks in while she's asleep, and steals it, feeling like a heartless monster the whole time. As he leaves Karen's house, Daredevil remembers how all this happened, how he rented a plane in disguise and helped a dummy on board who looked exactly like Matt Murdock. Then, how he sabotaged that plane and dove out and into the water as the plane exploded into the air, killing Matt Murdock. And also that he could find a man named Star Saxon, who knew of Daredevil's secret identity, knew that he was secretly Matt. But now that Matt is gone, so has Saxon's leverage. And so Daredevil hunts for Star Saxon, scouring the city for days, but only finding 2-bit hoods, and also Spider-Man fighting 2-bit hoods. And Spider-Man is confused. He'd always thought that Daredevil was Matt Murdock, but he guesses that he was wrong since Matt is dead now. Then, with no luck hunting Saxon, Daredevil checks out a newspaper and finds out that Mr. Fear, an old villain of his, is out of prison and issuing Daredevil a challenge. Fight Mr. Fear at the zoo and he'll give $100,000 to charity. And so of course that's what Daredevil does, showing up at the zoo where a crowd has gathered ready for a fight. But he's ambushed by Mr. Fear and the two tussle in the sky before Mr. Fear shoots Daredevil with a repello ray and sends him down into the polar bear enclosure. As Mr. Fear swoops in for a winning blow, Daredevil plays dazed, letting the villain get close enough before he uses his billy club to latch onto Mr. Fear's flying device. But Mr. Fear has a new power. He simply points at Daredevil and our hero is suddenly overcome with fright, overcome with fear, his body becoming so weak that he falls from his rope and down into the trees and onto the ground. As the sudden burst of fear dissipates and Mr. Fear escapes, Daredevil watches the crowd start to leave, embarrassed to be supporting this cowardly hero. What if Daredevil killed off Matt Murdock just in time for the man without fear to become a coward? Spider-Man is hunting down Doc Connors, kidnapped by the Magi, and he finds out their address by dangling a bunch of mobsters from the 20th story. And at that address, Silvermane, previously an old and dying man, is now middle-aged again, and Man Mountain Marco refuses to believe it. This must be some kind of trick. And in all of this commotion, Doc Connors sneaks away. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 75, Death Without Warning. Although I guess this is technically a warning. Caesar Cicero wants to take over the Magi, and when he hears a commotion in the other room, he assumes that Silvermane has had a heart attack and died, leaving him in charge. And so he's very disappointed to learn that not only is Silvermane alive, he's also much younger. He's also as strong as he was back then, which Silvermane proves by beating Man Mountain Marco into submission to prove that he's the real Silvermane. He grabs Marco and forces him to pledge allegiance to him. But as he does, Marco notices that Silvermane is even younger still, that all the grey has gone from his hair. But before either of them can question why, Spider-Man smashes through the window to rescue the Connors. He takes on Man Mountain Marco first, finding it much easier than last time as he pulls him up into the air with one hand and slams him into the ground. And when it's time to fight Silvermane, he's fighting someone even younger. Silvermane is in the prime of his life. But where is Doc Connors in this? He knows what the serum is doing, and you might have guessed too, and he knows that it's only a matter of time before the Magi take care of him. And so the Doctor flees, hoping to find his family, but instead finding stress that turns him green and grows his arm back, and suddenly the lizard is roaming the halls. But back with Spidey and Silvermane, and our hero is taking some hits from the vicious and newly young mobster. But Silvermane keeps on getting younger, and each hit is getting weaker, and soon Spidey is able to shove him to the ground. But Spider-Man is then interrupted by the rest of the Magi moving in to take him down, and so that he doesn't see that Silvermane has become a boy now, or hear him scream into the void that this isn't what he wanted, not this. Spidey just witnesses a child in adult's clothing fleeing the scene, and by the time he can finish off the mobsters, he's too late. He hears the boy crying, and he sees the crumpled clothes, and the sobs fade into nothingness. Silvermane is dead. But Spider-Man can't mourn for long as he races through the building and smashes down a door to rescue the Connors. Well, Martha and Billy, they don't know where Kurt is and they fear the worst. And their fears are founded as Doc Connors is racing against time to board himself away into a room to keep his family safe, but he's unsuccessful. The Lizard emerges once more, too early, thinking only of violence. Nothing can stop the Lizard. He's strong and angry and looking for revenge. The only thing distracting him are two faces in his mind of Martha and Billy, but they soon fade as the reptile part becomes more dominant and he's only left with anger and a need to kill Spider-Man. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is the Amazing Spider-Man issue 76, The Lizard Lives. Spider-Man has rescued Martha and Billy Connors, and he gets them secure in a safe house, hidden away from where the Lizard might find them. With them safe and worried about Kurt, Spider-Man swings away to find the villain, but not before promising both the Connors that he won't hurt the Lizard, for fear of hurting their loved one. But before taking on the Lizard, there are people in Peter's life that need attention first. He calls Aunt May from Florida, who is worried about how little he is called, and then he says a quick hello and goodbye to Harry as they pass in the doorway, as he's probably creeped out by Harry's moustache that apparently MJ loves. Then across town, Peter catches up with Gwen, who hasn't seen him in days and is worried that there's another girl. But Peter reassures her there's no other girl for him but her, and that he just has to sort out one more thing and then he can fully explain himself, explain why he hasn't been around. And in the other room, Gwen's father George and Robbie Robertson are discussing the identity of Spider-Man. They don't think that he's a bad guy, but they don't understand why he wears a mask. When they spot Peter talking with Gwen, they quiz him, since he's taken lots of photographs of Spider-Man. Who is he really? But Peter can't think of anything of note to say about our hero, and so the older men leave him to spend time with his girlfriend. The next morning, the news on the radio wakes Peter with the announcement that the Lizard has been spotted in the city's east side. When he arrives on the scene of the spotting, his web is snapped by a tail, and then he's chased down the building by the Lizard as he falls, before he swings himself to safety. He then battles the Lizard, but desperately tries not to do any lasting damage. He throws the Lizard into a wall and slams him into the ground, but he's being too cautious and finds himself being strangled by a tail and almost thrown from a building. When he tries to web the Lizard up, he finds himself being slingshot into a chimney and beaten down. Defeated. But Spider-Man stands against his better judgment and feeling weak. He can't take the Lizard on, not if he can't hurt him. Instead of a direct fight, Spidey lets the Lizard grab him and drop him from the building. He thinks that he can then swing inside the building and wait for the Lizard to follow, getting the jump on his scaly foe. But as he falls and is about to swing inside, he's caught by the Human Torch, who figures that he's saving Spider-Man's life. The torch brings Spider-Man back to exactly where he doesn't want to be, the rooftop with the Lizard on it. And then the torch squares off against the Lizard, and Spidey realizes that he doesn't know that Doc Connors is in there, that he needs to be careful when fighting him. And Spider-Man is too weak to intervene. The Human Torch is in battle with the Lizard, not knowing that his scaly foe is actually an innocent man inside. And when Spider-Man explains that he doesn't want the Lizard hurt, the Torch doesn't understand why, and refuses to give up the fight. No amount of asbestos webbing will stop him, and when the Torch knocks the Lizard from the rooftop, Spider-Man swings down to grab him. He can't let Doc Connors die. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is the Amazing Spider-Man issue 77, In the Blaze of Battle. In a safe house, Martha and Billy Connors look out of the window, hoping that their husband/father is safe. As his mother cries, Billy leaves, heading out into the streets of New York and hoping to find the Lizard, to see if there's something that he can do. Elsewhere, the Lizard is attacking Spider-Man, despite the fact that our hero just saved his life. How can Spider-Man stop him without harming Doc Connors? The Torch interrupts the fight, by attacking the lizard, and then Spider-Man interrupts that fight by attacking the torch. As our two heroes fight, apparently unable to simply talk to each other about an easily solvable problem, the lizard escapes to the water, which is the lizard's natural element. And that gives Spider-Man an idea, and with the torch webbed up, he swings down to a factory, hoping to find what he needs inside. As he searches, the Human Torch gets free and continues to chase down the lizard, using his flames to boil the water when the lizard dives in to escape. Fortunately, Spider-Man arrives just in time to save the lizard once again, diving into the water, cutting off his air supply and dragging the unconscious lizard back to the surface. As he emerges from the water, and the Human Torch once again squares off for a fight, Spider-Man tells a lie. He tells Johnny that his spider-sonic hearing, a power that he definitely has, picked up a distress call from the Fantastic Four, and so Johnny flames on and flies off, leaving Spider-Man to carry the unconscious lizard to that factory from earlier. But unfortunately, Billy Connors spots the two of them head inside. As Spider-Man works on his solution, Billy Connors sneaks into the warehouse and finds his father, currently a lizard, webbed up. But his presence excites the lizard, who tears from the webbing and pounces on his son, causing the boy to scream and pass out. But before the lizard can do more harm, Spider-Man arrives with a barrel of dehydrating powder, ripping it open and throwing it at the lizard. It dries the moisture from the lizard's pores, and as it does, the villain begins to transform, becoming Doc Connors once more, who bends down to care for his son instead of attack. And so Spider-Man has done it. He has saved the Connors family just this once. Everything has worked out exactly as planned. Everything is looking up for Spider-Man. The tablet saga is over and the lizard is human once more, and so he decides to give Gwen a call. But when he's able to, after fishing a coin out of the sewers and threatening an aggressive man who wanted the phone booth, she tells him that she's too busy to meet today. And so Spidey swings home rejected, and paranoid that she might be seeing someone else, only to find that his housemate is on the phone and there's no way to sneak inside. Well, everything was looking up for Spider-Man. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 78, The Night of the Prowler. Finally back home, Peter Parker decides to study instead, but he can't get Gwen out of his mind. And so he finds himself wandering the streets, contemplating a visit to Gwen's house, but eventually walking into the coffee pot instead. Inside he spots Gwen, who is chatting to Flash Thompson. She's asking Flash for advice about Peter, about his mysterious disappearances, wanting to help him because she loves him. But Peter doesn't hear any of this as he leaves the coffee pot dejected, assured that he's lost his girlfriend. He wanders the streets depressed, looking up at a window cleaner and betting that he probably has half the worries that Peter does. But the window cleaner does have worries. His name is Hobie Brown, and he recently lost his girlfriend, who left him because, despite being an amazing inventor, he was always negative and refused to rise above his station. And so to win her back, he had shown his boss some of his inventions, safety equipment for window cleaning, but was immediately shut down. Now Hobie doesn't have a girlfriend nor a future, and to make it worse, he's chastised by Jonah for taking half an hour to clean one window, too busy daydreaming. Before Hobie can explain, his boss marches in to chastise him further, even though Jonah defends him, pretending that he was speaking to Hobie about the extortionate rates. Hobie Brown quits on the spot. So now he has no girlfriend, no future, and no job, but he does have his inventions. He decides to become a costumed vigilante, using pellets designed to shoot washing fluid to shoot gas, and gloves designed to cling to walls to cling to walls. He becomes the Prowler. But since being a hero would take too much time, he decides to be a villain instead, committing a robbery as the Prowler and then thwarting it as Hobie. Since he's after press coverage, he decides to commit his crime near the Daily Bugle. At the same Daily Bugle, Peter Parker arrives in need of money to send to Aunt May in Florida. He asks Jonah for an advance but is swiftly and loudly turned down. If he needs money, he should go to the bank. As Peter leaves frustrated, his spider sense goes off, and when he investigates, Peter comes face to face with the Prowler with an unconscious security guard. The Prowler begins to attack Peter, who grabs his gauntlet before Jonah arrives on the scene. Peter can't let Jonah see him go toe-to-toe with a villain. That would give away his secret identity, so what's he going to do now? Peter Parker is falling out of a window. He was fighting the Prowler inside of the Bugle, but he couldn't give away his secret identity, and so he pretended to slip and smash through the glass and fall down to the streets below, but secretly saving himself with his spider powers. But the Prowler really thinks that he's dead, and so he flees as J. Jonah Jameson shouts after him, yelling at him that he killed a kid. We're reading every Spider-Man ever, and this is the Amazing Spider-Man issue 79, To Prowl No More. As he flees, the Prowler is grabbed by Spider-Man. He only wanted to make a name for himself stealing, not fight a superhero, so he tries to escape from Spidey, but he's clearly outmatched. Spider-Man throws him about and knocks him down, surprised that his spider sense isn't really tingling. The Prowler isn't really a threat, but as Spidey lets his guard down, he's caught out when the Prowler sprays gas from his boot directly into Spider-Man's face. It doesn't knock him out, he's got spider powers, but it gives the Prowler time to run. But instead of chasing him down, Spider-Man becomes Peter Parker once more, and reveals to the people inside the Bugle that he's alive, claiming that Spider-Man saved him from falling, and then he heads home to collapse into bed, worrying about Gwen and how he saw her cheating on him last issue. The next morning, Peter finds himself at college, ignoring Gwen for the aforementioned cheating, and then snapping at her when she asks why. If she doesn't like Peter ignoring her, maybe she should go be with Flash Thompson instead. But that evening, he's feeling guilty about his reaction, and so to take his mind off of it, he goes out swinging into New York to stop the Prowler, bringing a gas mask this time. Before the fight though, he breaks into a drugstore, grabs some spare film and pays via webbing. He finds the Prowler robbing a jewelry store in an attempt to lure Spider-Man out, hoping to make a name for himself as the person that defeats Spidey. But the Prowler doesn't have any tricks that will work anymore. His gas is ineffective, and Spider-Man catches him when he tries to leap away, webbing up his boots to avoid any point-blank gas attacks. But when Spider-Man unmasks him, he doesn't find a criminal, but a lost kid, who explains why he dressed up this way, how he just wanted to use his talents somewhere. And Spider-Man, recognizing himself in Hobie Brown, lets him go. It's not like he actually hurt anybody as the Prowler, and maybe now he can do something with his life.
Thanks for making it all the way to the end. If you want to know what happens next, I'm recapping 1970 and beyond every Thursday. Subscribe to join on that journey. And if you want to delve deeper into Spidey's world, there are also video essays like this one about Mary Jane Watson.